I graduated from high school in the 50s. We were all faced with the draft. The draft was reinstituted for World War II, and of course they left it on. So we knew, sooner or later, if you were an able-bodied male between 18 and 26, you were going to get called. And I guess I decided I didn't want somebody to tell me what I was going to do. I'd rather have the selection made by myself. So my first inclination, I liked the Navy Seabees. I thought they were probably going to be a pretty good unit. And this was while I was in high school. But I ended up joining the combat engineers in the Army. So 8 January 1958, I set foot in the good old plain of Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and started my basic training. And it took me 35 years to figure out how to get out, I guess, but I retired then 5 August of 1992. So good career. It was an interesting career. We had a lot of good times. Started as a private, and I worked all the way up through Sergeant E6, and then they convinced me that I should go to officer candidate school. So in 1961, I ended up as a Fort Benning graduate, got commissioned as a second lieutenant, 7 July of 1962, and then served as a first lieutenant, got a first company command as a first lieutenant after 9 months of being a second lieutenant, which prior enlisted time sure helped there because I had a little bit of knowledge of what was going on. And I made it, went through captain, major, lieutenant colonel, colonel, and brigadier general, and on 5 August 1992, they retired me. I was a major general of the U.S. Army. So, probably was an Army post in the United States and some Air Force bases that I'd been on and served it and went to school, Fort Knox, Fort Benning, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and been to a lot of the posts, and I've served duty on a lot of them. But my favorite place would have to be Germany because I really like the people over there. I like the way they run things. Is a military term. Everything they do is dress right dress. You don't see anything out of order. And that's just the way they do their lives, and they maintain things really well. They're clean. The forests are well done, and they treated us really well over there every time we went. So that would have to be my favorite when you talk about locations. So really the biggest deployment we probably undertook was Desert Shield. And that started actually in 1990. And in fact, that was the biggest deployment we've made since World War II of sending units overseas. And that was quite an undertaking because most of our members we had a lot of members that had never served an extensive period of time on active duty. So you had to go through the process of go to mobilization stations. We had to get their equipment there, and one of my jobs as an expediter to try to get that accomplished, just to get everybody in country. And that was a struggle because we are not very well prepared, are we yet to this day, of having mobility in order to move large troop concentrations and their equipment to any location. We just plain don't have it. If you go back to the Cold War era of the 50s and the 60s, we pre-positioned equipment over in Europe. A lot of sites in Germany, we called them Pumpka sites, but it was positioned equipment ready to go, and all you did then was fly your people over. They fell on the equipment. And in fact, we used some of that in Desert Storm or Desert Shield, brought a lot of that equipment out of Germany and brought it down to Saudi Arabia. And because Third Army was actually deactivating at that time. So we simply brought them down, put them in country, and then after the Desert Storm was over, why they ended up coming back to the States, and we left the equipment in Saudi. But our medical battalion was one example right here in Iowa City. It was tough. And the only way we could get their equipment over from Baltimore to Bahrain was on an ocean-going barge, which took 61 days. So what we had to do was hold the people up at Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, which was our mobilization site for them. And a lot of them really questioned why they were being held there for so long, but as finally I said, they got a choice. You can either stay here where you got a little bit of comfort and your families can come and visit, or you can go over there and sit in the desert in the hot sand at day and cold sand at night and scratch the bugs. So I think that kind of explained it. And then after they got over there, then they found out then what the heck we were talking about. So that's kind of the short shot on some of the deployment. Things that you learn there, you learn discipline, you learn loyalty, you learn timeliness, you kind of learn how to get your thoughts together and to do things and live your life a little better and a little easier. And really, I think it's a bad thing that we can't get other people to get that type of training. I think the draft in that sense was good, because we exposed a lot of people to that. But since the draft went away in 1973, we just haven't had a need. You know, nobody, if they don't have to go, they don't go. We've got a lot of good kids in there now, but that draft did teach people, you know, where they don't get it somewhere else, they were able to get it in the military, and business reflects on that. And people today, if they say, we don't want to show up for work, they don't show up for work. And if they had that little basic training in them, it changes their mental attitude and their way of approaching business. I think we're a stronger country because of that type of training. I really do.